The Timberwolves fall for the third time in 4 games, a blowout loss to the Clippers, failing to score 100 points. The Timberwolves offense is stuck in mud. What went wrong in this one? Next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully you had a great weekend. I'm Ben Beecken, the host of Locked On Wolves. This is the post-game pod. We're going to talk about another really disappointing Timberwolves loss. Sunday afternoon before the big football game, the Timberwolves found their way to another blowout loss, this time to the LA Clippers, and it was ugly. There's no two ways about it. We're going to talk primarily about the defensive issues, the offensive issues. The defense wasn't great either, but the offense was much, much worse. We're going to spend most of today talking about the differing problems, the first half problems and the third quarter problems, and by that point, the game was over. So we'll dig into that a little bit. Obviously, the vibes are way off. Touch on that a little on today's show as well. But guess what? The Wolves play again tonight, and which is not great. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Just, there's only 2 games until the All-Star break for Minnesota. They've got to find a way to win these games. They have Atlanta tonight. We'll talk a little about that later. And also, Ayo Dosunmu's Timberwolves debut took place on Sunday. And we'll talk about what he did in his first game in a Timberwolves uniform as well. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right, so the Timberwolves come into this one off of a really bad loss on Friday. Friday night losing to the Pelicans, obviously a game they should have won, had every opportunity to win, and kicked away in the second half after holding a big lead. And hopefully you listened to the postcast with Jack Borman following. If you missed it, you can listen to it if you want to listen to another postcast of reaction after a terrible loss. But that happened Friday. Of course, Zion played for the Pelicans, which I guess is a little bit better than if he hadn't. It's still really bad, a terrible loss. And then Sunday, they turned around and lay an egg in a matinee, losing by 19 to the Clippers in a game they trailed by as many as 28. And again, this is a healthy Timberwolves team. Terrence Shannon Jr., the only guy not playing. Ayo Dosunmu's debut, played a lot of minutes off the bench. We'll get into that. But the Wolves come out flat once again. And there's plenty of potential excuses, right? Trade deadline hangover was the excuse Friday. This one, is a matinee, I guess. I don't know. But after all the stuff that was said following Friday night's loss, the Rudy Gobert stuff, and if you missed it, I guess you've been under a rock or not paying attention to Timberwolves stuff over the weekend, but Gobert called out effort from the team and accountability, seemingly insinuating that Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards have had effort problems and that Chris Finch has had a problem holding them accountable. Not a great look. And Finch responded in kind over the weekend I think it was on Saturday, basically saying, look, we keep things in-house. I would have rather he not said that. It's all not great. Now, we've seen not great moments before with this team, and this is something we'll talk about later in the week probably if things continue down this path. Hopefully they don't against the Hawks tonight. But, it was just 3 years ago, less than 3 years ago, when Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert got into a fight on the last day of the regular season. That was still Chris Finch's Timberwolves. And obviously the playoffs didn't go well. They did win. They lost the play-in game when Gobert was suspended to the Lakers. They beat the Thunder, believe it or not, that year it became the 8th seed. Lost in 5 games to the Nuggets. But then the next year, the Timberwolves go to the conference finals under Chris Finch. They do it again last year. And there were moments, maybe not quite as dramatic. Like, this is probably the biggest sit up and take notice of the vibes being completely off that we've seen the Timberwolves have, I think, since that moment in game 82 of the regular season in 23? I think it was 2023. I can't think of another, 2 years ago, they didn't lose more than 2 games in a row all season until the conference finals against Dallas. Last year, it was a lot more roller coastery. They only won 49 games. The regular season was disappointing, but I don't remember there being a moment where it was like, this is gross, right? between the actual performance Friday, and by the way, we're only a week removed, not even from the Grizzlies disaster last week. The Raptors win was in between and the deadline was in between, so we got thrown off the scent a little. But this stink has been around now for a little while. So it's not a good feeling. And I don't, Chris Finch is not going to get fired mid-season. He's just not. That's not how Tim Connolly is going to conduct his business. I would be absolutely floored if he was. And I don't think he should be mid-season. Now, if we get to the end of the regular season and the Timberwolves finish in some weird swoon where they're in the play-in or something, or lose dramatically in the first round, or I should say in drastic fashion, in 5 games or something in the first round, regardless of seed, then I think it's possible, maybe even probable, that Chris Finch loses his job in the summer. I don't think it happens in the next 2 months. I just don't. I know that there's a little bit of precedent with Mike Malone getting fired, mid-late March last year, which was shocking at the time and still pretty surprising. And the Memphis firing of Taylor Jenkins last year too. Like, there's some precedent there, but I don't think that happens. It's pretty unusual for a team that is back-to-back conference finalists and, as recently as a couple of weeks ago, was second in the West, or I guess third in the West, or I don't know, fourth in the West, but game back a second, or whatever they were, game back a third. I oversold that. They haven't been above fourth, but they were like a game away from third a couple weeks ago. The point is, I would be shocked if that happened. So I don't want to spend too much time on that here. This game, though, was a lot of the same recurring issues that we've seen recently. It starts with pretty poor defense, perimeter defense first and foremost, like just letting guys waltz into the paint. And then it snowballs when shots don't fall on offense. And when shots don't fall on offense, the Timberwolves' response is to devolve into isolation basketball. It's a bit of a domino. And it usually starts on defense. And that was actually, weirdly enough, it's been the Timberwolves' problem more often than not this year, is the defense, not the offense. And honestly, recently that has been the biggest issue. But the offense has now become an issue too. And it starts on the defensive end. And the Wolves find themselves in a bit of a hole. And then the threes don't fall. And the Wolves got some good looks in the first half. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. They got some pretty good looks, and they just missed them. I actually thought the offensive process at the beginning of the game wasn't all that bad. But then as soon as the Clippers started making shots and Kawhi Leonard got hot, which happened pretty quickly, and the first quarter was low scoring overall. But as we got into the second quarter, Kawhi was lights out. The Timberwolves started to press. And that means Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards decide, you know what? I'm just going to do this myself. And the ball movement dries up. And then it's a little bit like in baseball when your fielders don't see the ball because the pitcher can't throw strikes. And then they finally get a ball and they make an error because they haven't touched the baseball in, 15 minutes or whatever. And that's what happens to the Wolves offense is these guys play iso ball and then they throw grenades to guys on the perimeter with 4 seconds on the shot clock. It's like, oh shoot, I don't know what to do. I haven't touched the ball in forever. There's a little bit of that to the Wolves offense right now. And it's a domino effect. And I want to get a little bit more into some of the numbers on like the first half, the process being okay. And then the third quarter, the process was completely off. And that made this thing become a blowout fairly quickly. So I want to talk about that. We'll obviously talk about Dosunmu's debut here in just a little bit. We'll close today with individual studs and duds. We'll peek ahead at what's next as we draw ever closer to the All-Star break. We'll do all that here next on the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Prize Picks. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks. You get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. It's America's #1 app for sports picks. Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if your picks are right, you can cash in. You can choose for basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, UFC, and more. Plus, they've got features like early payouts and flex play, so you've got options while the games are still happening. I downloaded the app a few years ago, actually, but I got a lot more engaged over the last couple of years, and especially actually the last couple of weeks. And it's super easy to use, super easy to make your picks. I had an almost really good time with my football picks on Sunday. Very close. The kneel downs at the end of the game killed me with the Seahawks. But it was a lot of fun regardless. And it was something fun to follow along with for the game. You could do it with NBA lineups as well. Of course, you can, players you already follow. So you could look at Anthony Edwards for tonight, say more or less on his points or assists. So you could say Anthony Edwards more on points, and whichever Hawks player you want to pick less for, or maybe more for rebounds. I've been actually picking a lot of guards against the Timberwolves to get more on rebounds, because the Wolves give up a lot of guards to wings or a lot of rebounds to wings and guards. Plus, Prize Picks available in all 50 states. So no matter where you're at, it's easy for just about anyone to jump in. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKDOWNNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKDOWNNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. A reminder that if you have not signed up for the Everydayer Club, you can do that at lockedonwolves.supercast.com. You can jump into the group chat on Discord with Wolves fans. I've been active in there pretty much daily, so you can jump in there, join the conversation about the Wolves. You can also listen to ad-free versions of Locked On Wolves as well. Again, click the link in the show notes or go to lockedonwolves.supercast.com to learn more and get signed up. All right. So I talked a little bit about the process being pretty good in the first half. I actually, like, the ball movement wasn't great, but it was okay. They got up, I think it was 18 3-pointers in the first half, but they made just 3 of them. And that's why when you look at the assist numbers, so in the first half, the Wolves had only 9 assists. And actually for the game, they only had, I think, 17. Yeah, 17 for the game. They had just 9 in the first half. But I think that undersells how, and again, decent, not great, decent the ball movement was. The shots simply didn't fall. And Anthony Edwards had some comments after the game about he thought the energy was good. They just didn't make shots. That was, I think, disingenuous. The energy was not good. And I already kind of talked about that in regards to the vibes around the team, because it wasn't positive. But there is some truth to the offensive process in the first half being more about missed shots, because turns out they were 3 of 18 on 3-pointers in the first half. Edwards and DiVincenzo combined were 0 of 9. I don't even think Jaden got up a 3 in the first half. But, I mean, you make 2 or 3 of those, like, say you make 3 of 9, which is still below where Edwards and DiVincenzo you'd expect them to shoot. Now, all of a sudden, you have 12 assists, which is a lot more of a reasonable number. And the deficit's probably not 12. It's probably in the, 8 to 10, actually less than that if they'd made 3 threes. So sometimes it is just about the shot making. Now, let me be clear. They still only had 42 points at halftime. Jaden McDaniels still only had like 1 shot attempt at halftime, which is not great. And the third quarter was horrendous for the Timberwolves. Minnesota finished with just 17 third quarter points. Kawhi continued to just completely take over the game. And the Wolves' response was to play isolation basketball. Ant finished this game just 1 of 8 on threes. Dante DiVincenzo attempted just 3 shots and had 1 point in this game. All 3 of his shot attempts were 3-pointers. Jaden McDaniels had 2 points on 4 shots in this game. Naz Reid had 8 points and did not make a 3-pointer in this game. Again, as a team, they had 17 assists. Not a single person had more than 3 assists, and only 1 guy had 3 assists. A bunch of guys had 2 or less. Now, people that don't actually watch the Wolves will look at this and be like, it's because they don't have a point guard. It's not that. That's not the reason. The ball moved okay in the first half. They missed a lot of shots. In the third quarter, the ball did not move. It was Anthony Edwards and it was Julius Randle saying, hey, we're going to do this ourselves. And for the game, they combined to shoot 13 of 32, which is not like a horrific number, but it's not great. They were combined 2 of 13 from outside the arc. They did get to the line 16 times combined and shot 12 of 16, which is fine. They combined for 4 assists and 6 turnovers. 5 of the 6 turnovers coming from Anthony Edwards, which is uncharacteristic. Ant doesn't actually turn it over all that much. So, again, I go back to the first half, the assists weren't great. The shooting was worse. The third quarter, it was all bad. The offensive process was terrible for Minnesota. They don't get into actions. It's not a, they're not swinging the ball. They're not making the defense change their attention, change sides of the floor, right? It's not swinging the basketball. It's not Ant getting off the ball. It's not Julius getting off the ball. It's whichever star gets the ball first, I'm going to try and score because I'm going to fix it. And I don't think it's entirely selfish. I know it appears that way, and ultimately it is. But I think it's, look, I'm going to drag us out of this. And that's obviously a problem too, right? That it doesn't really matter what the mindset is behind it. If you're not passing the basketball, then you are the problem. And I go back, the energy wasn't good either. Yeah, I disagree with Anthony Edwards on that. I think the vibes around the team, the energy overall was really bad the last couple of games. And I'm sure the trade deadline had something to do with it. I know it's the dog days. I know the All-Star break is this week. I know that the stuff playing out in the media between Rudy Gobert and Chris Fitch is not good. But they got to find a way to be more competitive than this. Now, other caveat, in addition to it being a matinee game, obviously the Clippers traded James Harden, but Kawhi Leonard's having a fantastic season. He's been arguably a top, 10 player in the NBA this year, which is relatively unexpected given how much he's been hurt. So that matters too. But outside of Kawhi Leonard, nobody else on the Clippers did really any damage. John Collins had 15 points. Niederhauser had 15 points off the bench. And only one other guy had double figures. That was Kobe Sanders, had 10 points. This was all about Kawhi being Kawhi. And nobody else on the Clippers was really dangerous in any way at all. Now, they also made threes at a high clip. A lot of that was Kawhi, too. John Collins made all three of his three-point attempts. But, again, that's the Wolves' defense being slow-footed, not having a sense of urgency, and massively contributing to everything the Clippers did well. So it was both. Both can be true. I'm not making excuses when I say the Clippers played well. They played really well. They defended great in the first half, which contributed to the Wolves shooting 3 of 18 from outside the arc in the first half. And the Clippers offense, namely Kawhi, was awesome in the second half, or really throughout the game, as the Wolves offense completely devolved as the game wore on. And Minnesota ultimately shot 8 of 33 outside the arc. And I already talked about this, but Ant and Julius together, 2 of 13 on threes in this game. The Wolves are 8 of 33. That's 24%. The Clippers were 14 of 27. That's 52%. The Clippers had 8 more assists than Minnesota. The Clippers had 7 less turnovers than Minnesota. I didn't even talk about the turnovers. Ant had 5. Rudy Gobert had 5 turnovers in this game. Another bad game for Rudy. I mean, that's 2 straight games. You look at the Timberwolves' 4 best players, and they've been bad. Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, whatever order you want to put them in, they've been all 4 of them have been bad from the Pelicans game on Friday to the Sun. You can't have all 4 of your best players be bad. And that's what happened. I want to talk quickly about the Dosunmu debut. Ayo Dosunmu played 25 minutes off the bench. So actually 1 more minute than Nas. So he played the most minutes of anyone off the bench, 5th most of anyone on the Timberwolves in this game. He had 11 points on 4 of 11. He was 3 of 7 outside the arc. He had 2 steals. One was a really great hustle play where he knocked the ball away. Actually, I think the Clippers, I forget who it was, the player on the Clippers dribbled it off of Ayo's foot. Dosunmu dove, picked it up, hit it ahead to somebody, and then he got it back and scored a layup in transition. I thought the shooting was good. I thought the aggressiveness was appropriate for the most part for Dosunmu. He missed a couple of shots inside, also hit a tough layup in his first bucket in a Wolves uniform. He was a negative 33 in this game, in a game that the Wolves lost by 19. Only one other guy was worse than a negative 17. And that was Ant, was a minus 23. Dosunmu was a minus 33. And this is one of those where I don't think Dosunmu played well, but I don't think he was the worst player on the floor for the Timberwolves. So, again, individual players, single game plus minus is extremely noisy. And I would argue that, I mean, nobody really played well for the Timberwolves in this game, like to a man. I already dragged the Wolves' best 4 players. Dante, it's not always his fault if he doesn't get enough shots up. This was partly his fault. Scoring 1 point in 24 minutes. Nas wasn't very good. I mean, like, why even do studs and duds for this game? Like, nobody played well. I guess Bones Highland would be like the only guy that I thought was like a plus player for the Wolves. Dosunmu, I thought was actually okay. He was probably right in the okay range. Like, if I was truly doing studs and duds, and I've decided I'm not even going to bother for this game. Bones would probably be the only one that gets a stud. And I would put Dosunmu in kind of the middle category if there was one, and maybe Julius Randle. I thought he had some good moments despite the lack of ball movement, and he contributed to that problem. But Rudy was bad. Jaden was bad. DiVincenzo was bad. I thought Ant was bad. Nas was bad. That's it, right? Like Dosunmu and Bones Highland were like the only guys that were decent. And then garbage time was Jalen Clark and Jean Beranger, basically. Julian Phillips scored his first bucket in a Timberwolves uniform. I don't know. It is just ugly. Just a really ugly game. All those same problems the Wolves have been having really reared their ugly head in this game. So what I want to do next is we'll talk about the Wolves-Hawks game tonight. We'll talk about the schedule upcoming and what to look for in Wolves-Hawks and over the final, I guess, 2 games before the All-Star break. We'll have, 9 days in between Timberwolves games where we can obviously talk some All-Star on Friday and Monday, but otherwise really kind of, I guess, soul search, if you will, on behalf of the Timberwolves. Like, what do they do? What's next for this team? Let's dig in a bit on immediately what's next in terms of Wolves Hawks and the week. We'll do that here next to close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports that you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling, matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast. Maybe it's speed skating, got races that are decided by inches, hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off, and even niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. And my family loves watching the winter games. Like, we're all about it. Watched a lot of it this weekend. All about the prime time. I love me some Mike Tirico. Going to get him hosting a lot of the games here this week off of, doing the Super Bowl on Sunday. Just a ton of fun, a great watch. And FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone who's willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed-sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. If I were hiring, I wouldn't just want someone who can help. I want someone with real experience who can jump right into the role. And that's what I like about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a fit. Here's a stat that says it all. In the 1 minute that I've been talking to you about Indeed, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring. If you're hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, so the Timberwolves take on the Atlanta Hawks tonight. They need to get the bad taste out of their mouths of whatever we saw over the weekend, Friday night, Sunday afternoon. And look, there's only 2 more chances to do it. The Atlanta game tonight, Monday night at Target Center, and then they play again on Wednesday, and I'm blanking right now who they're playing. I'll pull it up here in a second. But it is I don't know. It seems real silly. It's not, though. Like, we're like 2/3 of the way through the schedule, basically, at this point. They're kind of must wins. You can't go into the All-Star break. If they lose these 2 games this week, it's Portland. They have Wednesday. So Atlanta and Portland, very winnable games. You can't go in losing 4 straight and 5 of 6. You just can't in the Western Conference. They're going to be teetering on the edge of the play-in range if that happens. So Atlanta tonight. Atlanta is 2 games below 500. They, after the trade deadline here, they lost to the Hornets, who, of course, are surging. On Saturday, Charlotte's won like 9 straight games. And that came after beating the Jazz and beating the Heat. Obviously, the Heat, they're struggling, but a decent team. But they'd lost to the Pacers recently. They've been really up and down all season. And, of course, the Wolves haven't seen the Hawks since that New Year's Eve day debacle. The last time, actually, that I remember being this, I would say Timberwolves fans would be despondent at this point after the loss on Sunday. The last time I felt this way about the Wolves was after the New Year's Eve afternoon game So what, 5 weeks ago when Minnesota lost by 24 and looked like they just did not care against Atlanta. Well, now Atlanta's back in town. Obviously, since then, they traded Trae Young, who did not play in that game anyway. And they're relatively healthy. They just traded for Jonathan Kuminga, who's out. I don't think he's playing Monday either. Dyson Daniels is day-to-day for them at this point. This is obviously, again, another game that Timberwolves should win. But who knows? What should we think about this team at this point, given some of these performances and playing to their competition? You almost want them to have tougher games. They played better in the month of January against good teams than they did in early December against bad teams. That's just kind of the way the season has gone for the Timberwolves. As of right now, if you take the entire season, last 2 weeks, we'll say that. Last 2 weeks, Atlanta's been a pretty middle-of-the-pack team league-wide. They're like 14th in point differential overall over the last 2 weeks. For the season, Atlanta is 20th on offense and 17th on defense, according to Clean the Glass. They are on offense, they don't get to the free throw line. They don't get offensive rebounds. They're bottom 3 in both categories. They're more about just making the shots they get. They don't turn the ball over either. And defensively, they're not a great defensive team. They're bottom 3rd in most areas of defense. They do a pretty good job at defending without fouling. That's really kind of it. This is obviously a winnable game for Minnesota, and it's going to be about, can they come out and play hard? I mean, like, at this point, it feels like they're a much better team, but they're only 6 games better than the Hawks this season. And I don't think it's reasonable to just like to think they're a significantly better team at this point. There's just no evidence that suggests that that's the case. Atlanta also plays really fast, and I think that's been the case whether or not Trae Young has been on the floor for them this season. He only played 10 games before he was traded, so that part doesn't really matter. It's Dyson Daniels, and it's Jalen Johnson, and it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's started 45 of the 52 games he's played, and he's averaging 20 points a game for them. They're pushing the pace. They obviously traded Porzingis away as well. They traded Luke Kennard away. So they did Vit Krejci. They sold off some guys who were in the rotation last time they played. And so, it does look a little bit different for them. Like if you look at the box score from their game Saturday against Charlotte, Nickeil played 38 minutes, started for them, obviously. Jalen Johnson, Risa Shea is playing a little bit of a bigger role offensively for them after the moves. CJ McCollum also is part of this team now, coming off the bench after the Trae Young trade. So he's going to, he always seems to kill the Wolves when he plays when he plays against Minnesota. Buddy Hield also is on the Hawks. No idea if he's going to play or not. He hasn't played yet for Atlanta, but it's a different looking team than we saw 5 weeks ago. But they're still going to play fast. They're still going to get up some threes. And it's still a team that the Wolves need to take seriously, as everybody is for the Timberwolves. So very curious to see how this one plays out. As mentioned, later in the week, the Timberwolves had the Blazers on Wednesday night. Another very winnable game. Another team kind of hovering around the 500 mark. Atlanta's 2 below 500. Portland's 3 below 500. We have not seen Portland since October, when the Timberwolves, wasn't it the first game of the season? It was at Portland. The Wolves won by 4. That's the last time. So we get Portland 3 times in the next 6 weeks, including 2 times in the next 2 weeks. We see them right after the All-Star break as well. So this one, of course, at Target Center. So the Wolves will get Atlanta tonight at Target Center, Portland on Wednesday, and something we're going to keep an eye on throughout the week is the vibes. And like, they're not good vibes at Target Center either. And who can blame fans, right? So, I don't know who's going to lift who out of this funk. It can't be Ayo Dosunmu by himself. He obviously didn't have a fantastic Timberwolves debut. It's got to be Ant. It's got to be, Chris Finch on some level motivating his team, but these guys just have to figure it out. And the runway is very short to do that before the All-Star break. And of course, later in the week, I do want to talk Julian Phillips as well. So like tomorrow will be the post-game pod following Wolves Hawks. Wednesday, we'll preview the Wednesday night game against Portland, who haven't seen him forever. And I think I'll do a Julian Phillips breakdown on Wednesday. Thursday will be a post-game pod. So Friday, we'll get you ready for the All-Star break. And then all of next week, save for anything significant that happens during All-Star weekend that we'll talk about Monday. The following week, we'll do some deep dives on the unofficial first half of the season for Minnesota, where everything sits and what's upcoming, some second half predictions, all that good stuff next week as well. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. A reminder that if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Wolves ad-free plus members-only Discord channel access and more. Head to lockedonwolves.supercast.com to join the club, or you can click the link in the show notes. If you're watching on video, we'll send you to the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel after this episode. Or if you're listening on audio, make sure to make your second listen NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of that very same Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.